Hello once again, witchy people, welcome back. It is November already, and I tend to come offline a little bit more this time of year because it's so busy here. So rather than say, oh, I'm so busy and this is what I'm doing, I thought I'd kind of explain to you not necessarily how I celebrate, but how my life kind of goes along between Samhain and Yule, because it kind of all blends in together as one here. We usually start off around about October 27th, 28th, and we start by the whole house. They have no choice. I am in charge. So we start off by clearing out cupboards and drawers and units, everything. We clear everything out, and everything that we don't need we give away. If it's usable, we give away. We clear out space, and it is very much, I don't necessarily celebrate Samhain as a new year, but definitely a time for new beginnings. You need space for new beginnings, so it's kind of like it's the beginning of a new year, whereas Yule is kind of, for me, getting towards the pinnacle of the new year, and I am one of those witches who tends to celebrate the new year in January. So after the 27th and 28th, with all the housework and the cleaning and the clearing and changing around of furniture is another thing we do, so making things fresh and new. We do a lot of baking. So whether that's baking to prepare for Halloween when all the children start knocking the door, or in preparation for further along the year, for the rest of the year, that kind of all gets rolled in together as well. Of course, then we get All Hallows Eve itself, where it is Halloween. It's not Samhain, it's Halloween through and through, because up until about 8 o'clock at night, it's constant knocking on the door with children, trick or treat, and I do love it. I absolutely love it. I don't dress up myself, I dress the dog up. This year he was very, very popular. I think he's 3 or 4 people said, oh, let me take a photograph, you know, this has got to go on Instagram. So, and he was dressed as a pumpkin this year. So that kind of is the Halloween, and then at 8 o'clock it kind of like starts to mellow out a bit. And then it's time for me and for Samhain. It's not something I tend to celebrate in a big way. I don't have any big rituals or anything like that. It's at this time of year I tend to get a lot of plants delivered, so I nurture the plants and keep them indoors ready to plant out. Things like my verbena I plant out in November, which is quite strange because my verbena at the moment is still flowering. It's probably one of my favourite plants in the garden because of its longevity. It starts growing and flowering about April. By May you've got some beautiful sort of like spikes coming up. Certainly by June you're in flower, and mine are still flowering now. And it's November. And so we kind of get the idea that we are nurturing and preparing for something that's going to be hard work. It's the lean months, it's the introspective months, through November and into December. Certainly November the 1st is a day of celebration. It's, if I haven't made any of my cakes for December, then November the 1st is when they will get done. November the 2nd this year, my daughter celebrated the Day of the Dead. She went to what they call a dirt hut. So it's a dirt floor, big hut, sort of very, very pre-medieval sort of feel, and they sit around a big smoky fire and tell stories and tales. And she loved that. So that was her. I didn't celebrate this year, but she did. I was still busy cooking. I say, and then it does tend to be the garden. The few dry days that we get, it's then time to go out and mow down that last burst of lush grass growth that we have here. because it's about a foot high. So we have to sort of cut it down, clear the garden, break off some of the flowers that are finished, break off the stems, tidy up the garden just a little bit. I do tend to let the garden go to seed because it's just the best way of keeping it going. I gather what I can if I need to gather it, things like rosemary that I can dry out, and perhaps holly. My holly tree this year has been amazing. Lots and lots and lots of berries on that. But then it comes through to November, and November is really my preparation for Yule. And yes, I celebrate Christmas, but not as a Christian festival, so I don't really celebrate Christmas. I celebrate, let's just say. Of course, Yule was always celebrated on the 25th because of the old, is it the Julian calendar? And then when it changed over to the Gregorian calendar, that's when it became December the 21st, 22nd that we celebrated Yule, but the Christians still kept the 25th and carried on celebrating Christmas, which is why there is that difference in the dates. So all throughout November we are cooking, baking, clearing, planning, and it is an awful lot of sat down night after night with lists, ticking things off and making things. Obviously November the 1st, by the way, my Christmas tree goes up, my Yule tree, Christmas tree, call it what you like, it is my green tree, goes up in my lounge and the house is decorated, and that's November the 1st. Some people think that's very early, but once again it is very much that I like to have that celebration of Samhain and Halloween and Yule kind of all melding into one, because they are very similar in a lot of ways. With Yule you tend to, obviously Halloween, Day of the Dead, the time when the veil is thinnest, but this also happens at Christmas, at Yule, at the end of December. But it's more to do with, rather than the thinning of the veil to connect with spirits, it's more the introspective and inner thoughts and feelings and connecting with your ancestors. And I like how that rolls in one into the other. So my fruitcakes, my boozy fruitcakes, are done, and I baked them beginning of November this year, and I baked 3, and that's for this year, next year and the following year. And yes, they do keep. Just ply them with cherry brandy and they stay lovely. But I also do a lot of crafting, not just to put things in my shop, but to make things for people. And that goes through obviously to Yule, to exchange gifts at Yule or Christmas, because much of my family still celebrate Christmas, and I enjoy Christmas. I like the colours and the feeling of Christmas, even if I don't celebrate it as Christmas. And I think if a lot of people are very, very honest, they don't celebrate in a very Christian way at all. A lot of what they do is based purely on pagan celebrations and sort of pagan festivities from the past. Now, I live in an area where we have, it's a smoke reduced or a smoke free area, which means that we're not allowed to have open fires. You can only burn things in your garden and have a bonfire in the garden at certain times. So I don't have big fire celebrations, but I do rely a lot on candles, and I like this time of year especially. It's a great time to make your own candles. Save all those leftover bits of candles that you've collected through the year. Do save them and make new candles, and that's great to do throughout the end of October and through November. And by the time we get to December, it's quite often panic stations. If I haven't got everything sorted out for everyone else's Christmas and my Yule, it is very much panic stations. I like to usually be finished buying gifts and making gifts by September, but I never am these days. So by the time December comes along, it's very much sitting and thinking, it's also quite difficult for me. My father passed away in December, many years ago now, and he did celebrate Christmas, but not as a Christian festival, because he was Jewish. We have a very eclectic family when it comes to religion and beliefs. But it was definitely, because my father died at this time of year, we always used to make a joke. And I think sometimes you do have to make light of some situations and put a joke in there every now and then, or else things become so dark. We always used to say that my dad hated Christmas so much that he purposefully died beforehand so he could avoid it. You know, he couldn't last till after Christmas. Which is sometimes, some people might think it's a very cold way of looking at it and a very detached way of looking at it, but it helps, and it's the kind of thing my father would have appreciated, the kind of humour he would have appreciated. But certainly throughout December, it's very much a time for thinking about the past, not just dwelling on the past, but thinking about the past and things you can change in yourself. Now, most witches, as witches, we don't like change, to be honest. When Brittany did her YouTube pagan vlog challenge, October YouTube pagan vlog challenge, this last month just gone, when it came to the word change and we had to talk about change, what most witches said that participated was, I don't do well with change. I don't cope very well with change. And I think that's very general for a lot of witches. The only way we can accept change usually is very slowly. The changing of the seasons. We like to have change slow and predictable. So throughout December, it's very much gearing yourself up to these changes. We're going through the lean times, the hardship times, you know, these long nights and short days. And it was a time, obviously, in the past when really there wasn't a lot around for you to have, and so you had to prepare. And I think that's something that's almost genetic. It's instilled with us so deeply now that we have to prepare and hoard things ready for this cold and lean season, that we all do automatically almost. And of course that goes back to what happens at the end of October and beginning of November for my family, where we clear out all our cupboards and give things to people that need them more than we do. It's a great way of clearing out cupboards ready for all the rubbish that you're going to get at the end of the year anyway. Whether you celebrate Yule, Christmas, both, or any other festival, in any other belief, you know, you're going to get a heck of a lot of tat thrown at you. And don't get me wrong, I like tat, but you need to find space for it. So it's really useful to think about others. If you're saying, well, you know, I have this beautiful duvet cover or this beautiful blanket and I really don't use it, but someone else could, so you pass it on. So it's definitely a time, especially throughout December, where you tend to think of others, because as a community you would have to, in the past, help each other out quite a lot, and you depended on each other. You know, you couldn't go through this cold season and this cold time of year on your own. You needed to support each other. And I think November definitely is my time of reading, I think, as well as sitting there with long lists and trying to figure out who's getting what and what am I going to make and what am I going to cook. It is still a time for reflection and still a time for thinking inwardly, but it's definitely a time for reading. There's nothing nicer than sat, you know, with candlelight or a lamp near you, snuggled up. If you're lucky enough to have an open fire, I actually have a fake flame effect fire, but that's lovely. And sit and read. And I tend to read a lot of books that I've read before that I enjoy. And that tapers off through December as things get more and more hectic. So this run up to Yule is definitely, it is a time for retrospection and introspection. So you think a lot about the past. You think about not just the past and how it affects you, but, and like I said before, you don't dwell on it. It's not something that you can dwell on, or you shouldn't dwell upon it. It's definitely something that, even if you don't like the choices that you've made in the past, at least you've learnt from them. So that's that time of thinking of the past and then thinking of what you would do different and what you've learned. And maybe things that you'd even do the same. So like I said, it is a very busy time of year, not necessarily to go out and do things, but certainly for sitting, thinking and sorting out your head and your heart and your family and your home. By mid-December, this house is chaos. There are presents piled up everywhere. There is food piled up everywhere. And I think especially the eat, drink and be merry is very important, because that small time of abundance that you have at the end of the year, that you celebrate. Pagans were celebrating for years before Christmas was considered to be an in thing, if you like. I don't mean that disrespectfully to Christians. All I'm saying is that as a whole, mankind celebrated at the end of the year. And it was a time when we had abundance. We saved up throughout the time, all the little bits of time, and we come together to celebrate so that we could all share. And for everyone bringing something little, we got something big and something deserving. And it was eat, drink and be merry today, because tomorrow you may not have this. You know, things will get easier from now, but they're not easy yet. And that was the message that really we had, and the message that we shared. So my house tends to be very much full of food, and it's a time to be jolly. Why not? Yule comes from jol, J-O-L, a very ancient word, and it's where the word jolly comes from. So be jolly. Now I will be online a lot, hopefully, between now and Yule and afterwards and throughout the new year. But I wanted to sort of get this out now because, as I said, it is a very busy time, because the thought processes that go on at this time of year can be they're very deep, and, well, they should be deep. And as I said, I do make things, like I craft a lot, I make a lot, I write a lot of lists. I don't necessarily complete all of my lists, but I write lists. And of course, throughout Halloween and then the beginning of November, being in England, beginning of November and me having pets is quite a hectic time, with all the fireworks going off. Personally, I'm a bit of a killjoy, really. I think that there should be only displays, public displays, and only on the day that they're needed. So if you're celebrating in another religion where you use fireworks, the one day where you celebrate that, your particular day of celebration, that's when you should let off your fireworks. In England, obviously, November the 5th is bonfire night, Guy Fawkes night. And I think there should only be public displays only on that day. I don't care what day of the week it lands on, it should only be that day. Because especially over the last couple of years, the fireworks that have been set off, they usually start way before November. They usually start sort of like middle onwards of October. They become very loud, and the animals, the pets that I have that never minded these loud noises before, it's got so loud and so scary for them that they are now permanently frightened. And although today is the 8th of November, there are still firework displays going on throughout the night, and I know there's going to be a lot more this weekend as well, which is a shame, because most people are pet owners, so most people should think about their pets and how this affects them. And like I said, I'm a bit of a killjoy. I don't think anyone should have big firework displays of their own. I do think they should be public, and public displays only. But I'm rambling on about firework night, which is gone. It's past. So it's very much, apart from all that time that I then have indoors with my pets, keeping them safe and trying to make sure that they're not too frightened, is actually gives me a start throughout November and December to how it goes on, sort of like cuddled up, making sure everyone's safe, making sure everyone's warm, making sure everyone is calm. And that carries on throughout. It's a harshly taught beginning to carry on for the rest of the year. For those cold nights where you just need to be in and to stay warm and stay safe and look after your loved ones and remember the loved ones that have passed. So like I said, I'm not going to talk about how I celebrate. That's because I think each person who celebrates throughout Samhain or Halloween or Yule or Christmas, it has to be very, very personal. And everyone does it slightly differently, and it is nice to share, but you know you have your own ways of doing things. You don't want to listen to how I do things. This is just how I live my life throughout November and December, and it is quite boring, yes it is, but it's still very busy. So there you go, that's my run up to Yule, where I'm hoping this year to have a Yule night, a long Yule night, where me and some friends will sit round, and close family, and we will stay out for as long as we can at night with candlelight and my flickering fake fire and tell stories, very much like the Day of the Dead, only it will be stories of people who have passed, people who we love, and swapping of stories on how to maintain that feeling of warmth throughout the year when things seem really most bare and most lean and most cold. There you go, I have rambled on for a long time, and I'm going to shut up. I will be back soon. I will be updating, and I will get things done. I will get the YouTube Pagan Challenge done. I think I've got 10 more to do before the end of the year. However, I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you for watching, witchy people, and I hope that your Samhain or your Halloween or however you celebrated was great, great fun. And I do hope that your coming Yule or Christmas or however you celebrate will also be a joyous time for you all, and jolly, very, very jolly. Thank you for watching, witchy people. Bye for now.